Hey guys, so real quick, new Sporting Logically podcast with me and Tucker from Sporting Logically on Spotify, iTunes, top comment of this video, all that stuff. We mainly talk about YouTube because there's not much happening in the NBA if we're being honest. But anyway, if we talk about these 2019-2020 NBA win predictions, and this is from the actionnetwork.com, from places like Westgate, PointsBet, DraftKings, and FanDuel, I think there are some interesting things. So according to these guys, the top 5 teams in the NBA are going to be the Bucks, Sixers, Clippers, Jazz, and Rockets. So I think it's understandable for the Bucks to be number 1 because they didn't have that much actual player movement. I mean, Brogdon is gone, but you can argue the Wesley Matthews and George Hill pickups, or in the case of Hill, re-signing or whatever, are kind of going to replace that. Philly as number 2, their roster is going to be weird as hell, but when you look at where the Eastern Conference is at, I think it's kind of fair to have Philly here. The Clippers are very interesting. I think mid-50s implies that these sites are fearful of Kawhi and PG's health throughout the regular season, which I think is the proper way to go about it, because if Kawhi and Paul George put in, let's say, 77, 78 game seasons, then the Clippers could easily get over 60 wins. An interesting thing with the Jazz is how these sites predict that Utah is going to see a little bit of an increase in wins, but not a drastic one. I feel like Utah has been beloved by NBA nerds going into seasons for a couple years now, and then they come out of the gate pretty slow. So it's possible that these sites are kind of predicting that. Because it would be wild to think Mike Conley is only worth like 3 wins. But there's also been teams that have gotten better in the Western Conference, so perhaps that's part of it as well. Houston, I feel like these things are just considering Westbrook and Chris Paul to be kind of on the same level. Not that I agree with that, but Chris Paul is still beloved by all the advanced numbers, and Westbrook just had his worst season, so if you assumed that he was going to keep going downwards with his efficiency, then I guess it's also fair to think that the fit between these two is going to be rough, but the talent upgrade from CP to Russ, in my opinion, is still pretty damn drastic. This team is also a whole lot more athletic and dynamic than they were with Chris Paul, so a million different things could happen with these guys. And I don't really have a striking response to any of these so far. I think Denver being in the low 50s is interesting because all these all have them actually getting worse after their 54-win season. And I'll be honest, I mentioned this earlier in some video. I really wouldn't be shocked if Denver got the 1 seed because like it's going to be a full season where Jokic finally gets it, like I'm the dude and that's it. Because I feel like he was still warming up for the first whatever games this previous year. I guess the main point would be Jamal Murray's improvement, and also I think Gary Harris's health, and then we also have Michael Porter Jr., and he also suffered another injury, so that could be up in the air. But if I can have one solid opinion first, it would be that I think Denver is going to win more than what these projections say for them. Now we get to the Lakers, which of course are going to be the big thing from this. Part of it because they're just the Lakers, but also with the acquisition of Anthony Davis and still having LeBron, you would think, well, they're going to win a lot more than low 50s. I mean, I think there's a prediction you can make that they can win like 57 or 58 games or whatever. I will say this, Anthony Davis's health to me is not really in question anymore. He has played 3 seasons of healthy basketball, but of course he did play 56 games this previous year because of all the weird stuff about Clutch Sports basically trying to strong-arm him to the Lakers. So I think, the math is not going to know that was the reason. The math is just going to see that he played 56 games. So as a result, that's going to hurt the Lakers' projections, on top of the fact that LeBron missed time for the first time in like his whole career. Outside of the 69 games, I guess, played for the Cavs that one season. And of course, it doesn't help that they also won 37 games a year ago. I think it's also hurting them that a few of the guys they re-signed, like JaVale McGee, Rajon Rondo, whoever else, not advanced stats darlings, which I'm sure these things take into account. So basically, I think the Lakers are going to win more games in this. I think Anthony Davis, to To be honest, I'm kind of talking myself into Anthony Davis as the MVP for this upcoming year, and I can talk about that when I do an actual video on it. Now we can talk about my Celtics, who, according to this thing, are basically going to be in line with last year of high 40s in wins. I mean, the Kyrie to Kemba thing, I think it'll be better for all the reasons that everybody else is saying. Talent-wise, a little bit of a drop-off. Personality-wise, he's not Kyrie Irving. But I think these things are assuming that the Celtics defense is going to hold up. And I don't know. I mean, Horford to Cantor is a pretty massive drop-off defensively. And I do trust Brad Stevens to find ways around that, but at the end of the day, if you have Enes Kanter, you have Enes Kanter. And now, all that being said, do I still think the Celtics can win high 40s in games? Yeah, I mean, between Tatum and Jalen just getting more opportunities and stuff, with, like Rozier and Morris being gone, I could still see it. And now we move on to the Warriors, and in terms of advanced stats, win shares, all that stuff, Steph Curry and Draymond Green have consistently been at the top of the league in those things, partially because they always play together. But I think the acquisition of D'Angelo Russell was a good move, and I think it also is going to help them here because D'Lo, of course he was awesome last year for Brooklyn. So is this fair high 40s? I mean, PointsBet has them at 46.5, and these other guys have them, Westgate has them at damn near 49 wins. So are those fair projections for Golden State, which I guess would put them at, like the 5th seed in the West? Or actually the 6th seed? I think so. I will be honest, I don't really know what to make of the Warriors for this upcoming year. I mean, if Klay was there, then I think still title contenders. Without Klay, I wouldn't be shocked if they still won like 55 games. And Klay's going to come back at some point, we know that. But it would require basically everything going well in terms of Draymond being in great shape from the start of the season, Kevon Looney taking how good he was in the playoffs and stretching it out to a whole regular season. Someone on the bench is going to have to emerge as a real player, whether that is Willie Cauley-Stein, Jordan Poole, Jacob Evans, Amari Spellman, Alec Burks, Glenn Robinson III, Alfonso McKinney. Someone is going to have to step up, and I'm not expecting any new Iguodalas for them, and that's a loss that should matter as well. But can they just put a respectable 8 to 9 man rotation out there? And if that happens on top of Draymond being in shape the whole year, I could see the Warriors blowing past these projections. Now, I guess I could devote these last 2 minutes to just spitballing a little bit. The Pacers in the 47, 46 win range, I guess. The interesting thing there is the Sabonis-Turner front court, which I think could make or break this team, even with the acquisitions of Brogdon and TJ Warren and all that. I like the idea of Toronto still being solid without Kawhi. Now, PointsBet is the outlier, as they've got the Raptors at nearly 54 wins even with the loss of Kawhi. I think that would be because they were still pretty damn good without him last year, but I think the 45, 46 wins are a closer bet. I'm really high on the Blazers going into this season. I understand the Nurkic injury, but I think Damian Lillard, he always goes nuclear at like some stretch of the year. It's usually around January where the Blazers will go on some run where they go like 10-0 in a 10-game stretch or something like that. And I'm assuming that's just going to happen again, which is going to take Portland to either low 50s or perhaps even mid 50s if some other team disappoints a little too much or whatever. And apologies if I didn't mention every single NBA team here. Other things that I like to note, the Pelicans, nearly 40 wins according to at least 4 of these things. That's pretty fun. It is tough to assume how a rookie is going to impact, but we assume Zion's going to be awesome. The Kings actually getting a little worse based on last year compared to all these guys. I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if the Kings got into the 8th seed, but the Western Conference is going to be very competitive this year. It's probably going to be another one of those years where some team doesn't make it, but they win like 44 games. And then finally, just looking at the very bottom, the Hornets, apparently going to be the worst team, a little bit worse than the Cleveland Cavaliers. I could see it. I could picture the Cavs winning more than 20-something games, just if Darius Garland is awesome and if Kevin Love is healthy the whole year. So perhaps Cleveland could bump themselves up a little bit, but I think that's going to do it. I enjoyed just kind of freeballing on this thing. And once again, new Sporting Logically podcast with me and Tucker. Description of this video, Spotify, iTunes, and we just talk about YouTube pretty much.